On April 2, 2026, a United States fighter jet was downed over Iranian territory. The official reports from the Pentagon and mainstream outlets like National Broadcasting Company News are focusing on the rescue. They are highlighting the successful search and rescue mission for one pilot. They are presenting this as a story of operational competence under pressure. But in the rooms where the cold logic of power is actually calculated, the mood is not one of relief. It is one of structural alarm. The mainstream media is reporting on the survival of a human being. They are ignoring the death of a doctrine. To understand what just happened, we must peel back the first layer of the onion. This was not a mechanical failure. This was not a pilot error. This was the moment the illusion of American air superiority vanished over the Iranian plateau. For decades, the strategic architecture of the West was built on the premise of the invisible wing. Trillions of dollars were invested in stealth technology, electronic countermeasures, and high-altitude dominance. The public was told that American aircraft could operate anywhere, at any time, with total impunity. That is the illusion. The structural reality we face today is that a $100 million aircraft was brought down by an adversary that has spent 40 years studying the vulnerabilities of the superpower. One United States fighter jet downed over Iran. This is the sentence that defines the turning point. But the question that the official briefings are avoiding is simple. How? How does a nation under 40 years of technological sanctions track and engage a fifth-generation fighter jet? The answer lies in the blinding strategy we have MOXE in previous briefings. Iran has not been trying to match American technology. They have been trying to dismantle the systems that make that technology effective. By targeting the radar networks in Qatar and the United Arab Emirates, and by utilizing the exquisite real-time satellite data provided by Russian intelligence, Tehran has created a dark zone over their territory. In this dark zone, your stealth is irrelevant. In this dark zone, the mathematics of the battlefield have been inverted. To understand the tactical failure, you must understand the geography of the Iranian interior. This is the second layer of the onion. Iran is not a flat desert. It is a fortress of limestone ridges and mountain ranges. These mountains provide a natural barrier that obscures low-altitude radar and creates shadow zones where mobile air defense batteries can hide. American air doctrine assumes that if you control the sky, you control the ground. But geography has a vote. Iranian forces have deployed solid fuel, road-mobile missile systems like the Bavar 373 inside these mountain corridors. They do not emit a constant radar signature. They wait. They receive targeting coordinates from Russian satellites via encrypted Caspian sea links. They fire, and they retreat into the Earth within 12 minutes. The United States is playing a game of high-stakes chess against an opponent that is using the very crust of the Earth as a shield. When the fighter jet entered Iranian airspace, it was not flying into a vacuum. It was flying into a pre-calculated kill zone. Air superiority is a ghost when the enemy lives in the mountains. Let us look at the mathematics of the loss. This is the third layer of our analysis. The aircraft lost costs approximately $100 million. The training of the pilot represents another $10 million. The cost of the search and rescue mission, involving multiple support aircraft, refueling tankers, and special operations teams, runs into the millions per hour. On the other side of the equation, the Iranian missile used to down the jet costs approximately $150,000. The ratio of cost to consequence is staggering. For every dollar Iran spent to remove that jet from the board, the United States has lost nearly $1,000 in hardware and operational expenditure. This is not a military exchange. This is a bankruptcy proceeding. Washington is using a silver bullet to protect a glass wing, and Iran has $1 billion stones. The official narrative celebrates the rescue of the pilot, but the strategic realist sees the liquidation of the asset. You can rescue a human being, but you cannot rescue the credibility of the F-35 when its wreckage is being studied by Iranian and Russian engineers on the ground. This brings us to the second-order effects that the White House press briefings want you to ignore. When a United States jet is downed, the war does not just happen in the sky. It happens in the bond markets and the boardrooms of the global energy sector. The downing of this aircraft is a signal to the maritime insurance companies in London. It tells them that the United States cannot guarantee its own safety in the region, let alone the safety of a 300-meter supertanker. The moment the risk of uncontested air dominance disappears, the cost of global trade surges. We are already seeing Brent crude climb toward $140 per barrel. This is not because of a shortage of oil. It is because the structural certainty of the American security umbrella has been replaced by terminal instability. The real casualty of the downed jet is the petrodollar. For 50 years, the global order has rested on the belief that American military might was an absolute. That belief is currently burning in the mountains of Iran. If Washington cannot protect a single jet over a sanctioned nation, the value proposition of the American security umbrella evaporates. If you are watching from Europe or Asia, this is why your energy prices will jump 30% next month. It is not a market fluctuation. It is a systemic collapse of the old order. We must also examine the failure of the American decapitation strategy. The official line from the White House was that killing the supreme leader on February 28 would cause the Iranian system to implode. They expected a popular uprising. They modeled their plan on the hope of internal chaos. The mathematics of hatred do not work that way. Instead of an uprising, the United States has produced a hardline consolidation. The successor, Mojtaba Khamenei, is younger, more radical, and far more vengeful than his father. The downing of an American jet is a trophy for his first month in power. It validates his refusal to negotiate. It proves to the Iranian population that the great Satan is not invincible. Washington thought they were removing a leader. They were actually removing a stabilizer. By killing the only man who had the authority to negotiate a peace, the United States has forced itself into a war of attrition with a vengeful zealot who has nothing left to lose. Iran has spent 40 years being sanctioned into a corner. They have built an economy of resistance. The United States, by contrast, is a superpower that depends on a delicate, globalized system of trade. That system is fragile. It is sensitive to price shocks. It is vulnerable to long-term instability. Iran is winning by not losing. The United States is losing by not winning. Trump says the objectives are nearing completion. But the reality is that the United States is being forced into a face-saving exit before the midterm elections in November. The political calendar is the only reason the mission is being framed as a success. Voters in the United States do not care about the tactical data of bunker busters. They care about the price at the pump. When the price of gasoline hits $7 a gallon, the narrative of nearing completion becomes a political liability. Washington needs a way out. But they have entered a strategic cul-de-sac. If they withdraw now, Iran remains the dominant power in the Gulf. If they stay, they continue to burn through their interceptor stockpiles and their precious aircraft at a rate that manufacturing cannot match. The Pentagon is reportedly acknowledging that it does not have a complete picture of Iranian launch capacity. This is a polite way of saying they are operating in the dark. The official briefings will tell you that the enemy is degraded. They will tell you that the pilot is safe. They will tell you that the mission continues. The reality is that the era of American naval and air dominance in the Gulf is ending. The board has shifted. The geography has asserted its dominance, and the official version of the war is diverging further from reality every single day. In the next part of this briefing, we will moexe the specific failures of the naval defense systems that were supposed to protect the fleet while the jets were in the air. We will look at why the European allies have decided that this war is a suicide operation. And we will analyze the Zoom war, where American soldiers are managing combat from hotel rooms in Europe because their bases are no longer safe. The onion has many more layers, and each one is more unsettling than the last. Now, we must examine the tactical rot and the systemic failure of the United States naval and air doctrine in the Persian Gulf. Donald Trump has stated that the mission is nearing completion. But the structural reality in the Arabian Sea and over the Iranian plateau tells a different story. It is the story of a superpower currently absorbing the consequences of a war it was never designed to win. Let us look at the mathematics of saturation. This is the core of the Iranian strategy that led to the downing of the fighter jet and the harassment of the fleet. On March 25th, Donald Trump made a statement that should have ended the career of his entire communications team. He claimed that 101 Iranian missiles were fired at the United States ship Abraham Lincoln. He claimed that 100% were intercepted. In the world of physics, this is a lie. In the theater of strategic realism, it is a confession of vulnerability. The Aegis combat system is a marvel of engineering. It is a multi-billion-dollar shield, but it is a finite shield. To intercept 101 missiles, you must launch at least 101 interceptors. You must achieve 101 simultaneous radar locks. You must manage 101 terminal engagements. Saturation is not a choice. It is a law of physics. When you launch more incoming threats than the defense system can track, the shield fails. Even if the success rate was 95%, 5 missiles would have hit the carrier. 5 missiles would have turned a $13 billion asset into a burning monument to American overreach. Washington is claiming a perfect score while the smoke is still visible from space. The second-order effect of this engagement is the liquidation of the interceptor stockpile. Every Patriot missile costs over $4 million. Every terminal high-altitude area defense interceptor costs $12 million. Iran is using missiles and drones that cost a fraction of those figures. This is a bankruptcy proceeding disguised as a naval battle. The United States is burning through years of production in weeks. We are seeing a strategic inversion. The most expensive military in history is being bled dry by the most cost-effective one. This is not a victory. It is a mathematical liquidation. Now, let us examine the strategic paradox of the alliance with the United Kingdom. Donald Trump recently published a comedy sketch mocking British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He portrayed his closest ally as a coward. He did this hours before asking the Royal Navy to help clear mines in the Strait of Hormuz. This is a failure of leadership that will have consequences for a generation. The United States Navy lacks the specialized mine-clearing capability required for the shallow waters of the strait. The Royal Navy possesses that capability. It is the one thing Washington needs and cannot buy. To publicly humiliate the leader of the only nation willing to help you is a strategic error of the highest order. Germany has already called the mine-clearing mission a suicide operation. France has negotiated a separate peace. Italy and Spain have declined to participate. The United Kingdom was the last partner standing. By turning the British Prime Minister into a punchline, Trump has converted a partnership into a submission. Leverage is not cooperation, and a humiliated ally is a useless ally. The reality behind the curtain is that the special relationship is dead. It has been replaced by a transaction, and the cost of that transaction is the loss of American credibility across the entire European theater. Let us look at the economic heart of this conflict. The news reports focus on the energy crisis. They speak of a return to the 1970s. But this is far worse than the 1970s. In 1973, the disruption was a political choice by the oil-producing nations. In 2026, the disruption is a physical reality of the battlefield. When the refineries in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia were taken offline, the capacity to process oil did not just stop, it was destroyed. When Qatar Energy suspended its natural gas production, the energy lifeline of Europe was severed. This is not a negotiation, it is an attrition of the global supply chain. The petrodollar is the air that Washington breathes. It is what allows the United States to run a debt of $34 trillion. But the petrodollar requires two things. Oil must be sold in dollars, and the United States must protect the oil. Right now, the United States cannot protect the oil, and Iran is demanding payment in Chinese yuan to transit the strait. This is the end game of the conflict. If the world no longer needs dollars to buy energy, the American economy becomes a house of cards. The petrodollar was built on the promise of security. That promise is currently sinking in the Persian Gulf. The American consumer is seeing the first signs of this collapse at the gasoline pump. $7 a gallon is not just a high price, it is a political earthquake. Trump is deploying more troops because he has a midterm election in November. He needs the war to appear under control before the economy destroys his party. But Tehran is not operating on a political calendar. They are operating on a civilizational timeline. They have seen the Zoom war. The New York Times has reported that United States military personnel are being relocated from their bases to hotels in Europe. They are conducting operations remotely. Let that sink in. American soldiers are managing a live combat operation via video call from hotel rooms because the bases they were stationed at are no longer safe. This is not the behavior of a superpower in control. It is the language of improvisation under duress. The superpower is retreating into a digital bunker. The final layer of the onion is the survival strategy. Iran has realized that they do not need to sink the fleet. They only need to outlast the American political tolerance for pain. Every day the war continues, the cost to Washington increases. Every day the strait remains closed, the petrodollar weakens. Iran is winning by not losing. The United States is losing by not winning. Trump says the objectives are nearing completion, but he has achieved none of his primary goals. The Iranian regime is more unified than ever. The nuclear program is now a strategic necessity for their survival. The regional allies of the United States are looking for a way out. The United States is declaring victory while the foundations of its power are being liquidated. The successor problem remains the most dangerous unintended consequence. Mojtaba Khamenei is watching the American retreat. He is seeing the exhaustion of the interceptor stockpiles. He is seeing the failure of the maximum pressure campaign. He is the one who will define the post-war order in the Middle East, and he has no interest in the Western version of peace. The mainstream narrative is a distraction. They want you to focus on the podiums and the press conferences, but the reality is found in the tanker tracking data. It is found in the empty missile tubes of the destroyers. It is found in the rising yields of the bond markets. The board has shifted. The geography has asserted its dominance, and the official version of the war is entering its final phase only because the official version has lost its grip on reality. The architecture of deterrence has been tested, and it has failed. As we move into the next phase of this conflict, the question is no longer about Iran. The question is about the United States. How much of its global credibility is it willing to sacrifice to maintain the illusion of power? The answer will be found in the coming months, as the midterms approach and the bills for this war finally come due. The world is watching, the allies are recalibrating, and the geography remains, as always, the only God that does not change its mind. Behind the narrative, the structural reality is a liquidation of the old order. The official narrative provides a veil for the masses, yet the underlying structural shifts are visible to those who prioritize strategic reality over broadcast optics. Position yourself ahead of the next global recalibration by mastering the data that defines the emerging world order.